Hello, Hockey World. It is Thursday, December 13th, 2018.
I'm Michael Agello.
I'm Russ Cohen from Sportsology.
And I am Eklund. You're watching the HockeyBuzzcast on HockeyBuzz.com.
Sorry.
Podcast that comes every Monday through Friday.
A broadcast so nice you hear it twice.
Yes. We come to you at this time every Monday through Friday to fill you on the hockey going and comings or something like that in the hockey world. A little tired today, a little bit of slow news day. But I guess we should start with the St. Louis Blues. And
oh yes, the gift that keeps on giving.
Yeah. I mean, the unfortunate thing with the Blues is that, now they, like I said, they really were going all in this year. And now, we're
they're going all out.
32 games into the season and we're done. Yeah, it's tricky in the NHL. It's really hard. I mean, they really went for it. And now they've lost a coach. Now, according to their general manager, everyone is available.
Right.
So I don't know how much I believe that, but saying
I believe it, but you got to put it in a proper context. Everybody's available, but everybody's not. It's not like a clearance sale. It's like everybody's available, but we have prices for these guys. So Alex Pietrangelo is available. Vladimir Tarasenko is available, but it may be for a price that not many people want to pay. Right. So that, I think, is what's going to sort of mitigate this fire sale. And I think you'll see moves, but I don't think you'll see moves immediately. I think you'll see moves January and as the deadline closes, especially for
the framework.
Right. That's right. Exactly. Especially with the guys who, like we've mentioned and other people have mentioned over the last couple of weeks in Parayko and Pietrangelo. These are deals that can't be thrown together in 5 seconds. These are complex deals, probably with multiple teams, because they're defensemen that a lot of people want, and they will field offers and they will play the field for weeks until they get an offer that they think is equal to their value.
I give them credit, though, because look, sometimes you do things and they don't work and they realize it and they're calling it now. And it's good to realize it and just say, all right, this is where we're at. If something lucky happens, maybe we get back in contention. But if not, this is what's going to happen. And I think that's smart. Now, for people to think Tarasenko is just automatically available, I'm not buying that one.
Well, I'm not buying it either unless somebody's going to step up and offer, 2 or 3 really good young pieces for him, because he's 26 years old. By the way, I have to apologize and issue a little bit of a correction from yesterday when we were talking about the Sabres and them having St. Louis's first round pick. Somebody on Twitter, Vespis, is I didn't know this, but the deal with Ryan O'Reilly, the first-round pick for St. Louis is lottery protected, so they would be in the Jack Hughes sweepstakes. But the thing is, if they go through a reset, then the 2021st might be a lottery pick too. So
that's Lafreniere. If I had to choose between Lafreniere or Hughes, I'm going to worry about being in the Hughes sweepstakes and not as much about Lafreniere.
Right.
So I mean, I think that one of the interesting things, I talked to a GM this morning about this, and I was talking about, he hadn't actually heard yet the whole St. Louis thing. And it is funny how, like sometimes those of us who are, kind of like it's our job to keep up with things like this. And then with Twitter and everything like that, teams don't always hear these things right away. It's really funny. So I said, basically they're all kind of available. And he said, wow, he said, I hate that, because whenever that's happened, whenever a team comes out and says, that pretty much everyone's available, the prices go way up on all those players, because
that's why they do it.
That's why they do it. So, and this is a guy who was already talking to them about Parayko. So I think that it's interesting how this can play out. And,
one interesting thing before we continue on the Blues that I saw yesterday, and I buy it, and I buy the reason why it didn't happen. Elliot Friedman in the 31 Thoughts column was talking about the Pietrangelo rumors that started last week, and said that he believes that Pietrangelo was maybe offered to the Leafs in a Nylander deal, and that one, he's injured right now, so that I'm sure that would have affected things.
Mm-hmm.
2, he's 1 year away from unrestricted free agency, and he's 28 years old, and Nylander's 22. So if it was somebody who was locked up a little longer and a little younger, then I think that there would have been some more buy-in from the Leafs. But the age difference and the fact that probably the Leafs wouldn't be able to re-up Pietrangelo may have contributed to them saying, no, we're not going to do that. Now, Parayko fits the criteria more than Pietrangelo. He's at another 3 years at $5.5 million. He's a right-hand shot like Pietrangelo is. He's big. He's rangy. He can keep up with the style of play. I buy into Parayko in terms of if everybody is for sale, that the Leafs would be in on him and maybe in on Pietrangelo, but just not in exchange for Nylander. So I think that bears a lot of watching over the next couple of months when it comes to.
I don't know who's more valuable, to be honest. I mean,
it's Pietrangelo.
It's Pietrangelo.
I know. I think so. I think too. I mean, I think that who's more valuable. So that's why I was saying, I mean, I get that Parayko's younger, and I get that his contract is what it is.
You know what it is? Parayko falls under the Tyler Myers part. He's a bigger guy. He's probably a little better than Tyler Myers, but he's not a superstar, and he's not even necessarily a top pairing guy in this league. But he's really close. He's a
top four defenseman, and the reason that I think Toronto would be more interested in him is the cost certainty and the term on the deal. They have to think that way. Other teams don't. Other teams will say we want the infusion of more talent right away, and then those teams might be able to re-sign Pietrangelo because they have more cap space.
Right.
Yeah, it's possible. I do agree. I know Jaden Schwartz is another name that people today were talking about all over the place because he's got a lot of value. I mean, he's been hurt so much, so it's hard to really tell what he is, but he is when he's playing, he's just incredibly talented kid.
They still want him. They would.
Yeah, well, there's definitely teams that want him. I know Montreal's always liked him. I think that it'd be interesting to see how that plays out. If he truly is available. I know some people think that even though they're saying everyone's available, there are certain guys that aren't available. I think Darren Dreger came out and said he doesn't think Jaden Schwartz was available. But
I don't think the young guys are available. Like they sent Jordan Kyrou down to the minors. They're not trading him. He's on his entry level contract. They're not moving Robert Thomas. They're moving the guys who have big salaries, who are like Alex Steen, maybe Tyler Bozak, even though they just signed him. I don't think they can move Ryan O'Reilly because Ryan O'Reilly's got another 4 years left in his contract. But I don't think anything's out of the question depending on what they can get back.
Here's the crazy thing, though. So we're now talking about the third team and talking about Ryan O'Reilly again, and Ryan O'Reilly's still putting up numbers. Yeah. And we're still talking about him possibly still getting traded at some point again.
Right.
And I know, Eck, I know you hate baseball, but there are some guys that were like this in baseball.
Yeah.
Like Bobby Bonds would put up numbers every year, but Bobby Bonds, who's Barry's father, would go from team to team to team to team.
Yeah.
Right.
And it just seems like O'Reilly's set up for this. I don't know exactly why. I mentioned things before, but I don't know why.
He's a very unique player, and in some ways, I mean, he does put up numbers, but he doesn't have a whole lot of speed. So he's a difficult player to pinpoint. There are people who just don't like him. I mean, there are teams out there that wouldn't touch him with a 10-foot pole. There's other teams that would give up a lot for him, as St. Louis did. But he's definitely a very polarizing character. He obviously can play well with certain skilled players. He's shown it in the past. He's shown how he can play with even last year at the World Championships with Connor McDavid. He was outstanding. But when you don't have him in when you have him in other situations, he can be very average, and he can be very slow. And the Blues in general are slow. They look slow. That's one of the issues
that's only because Schwartz and Fabry aren't there. Like they really help.
Oh yeah, they had a ton of speed, no questions about it. But the interesting thing to this is, as you look at the bottom teams, and I saw this thing the other day, the chances of Chicago and LA are the two leading candidates for the Jack Hughes sweepstakes or whatever it is. I mean, we're starting to get to that point way early, but it still seems like we're looking. When you look at the bottom teams, there are some teams that are definitely going to maybe take that turn. Maybe the Blues are taking that turn towards the Jack Hughes thing. But then there's some teams that are down there at the bottom, like the Flyers, who don't want to be in the Jack. They're making it clear they don't want to be in the Jack Hughes thing at all, and they're trying.
But here's the thing: they may not want to be, but they're in it, and they may not be able to get out of it. Here's what we've looked at. If you do the math, and I know you like doing math, they would have to literally go 6-3-1 every 10 games the rest of the year to get into contention. And that's something that is a big leap from what they're doing now, even if they got a star goalie or a star defenseman.
Let me just say this. I know that there's resistance on the part of Dave Scott and the part of Paul Holmgren and Bobby Clark and now the new GM Chuck Fletcher. But after you watch what happened last night and they give up 3 goals in the last minute and a half of the third period and blow a game to Calgary, you are dumb if you don't go for Jack Hughes, because this team clearly is not one player or one goaltender away from being a good team. There is multiple problems here.
Oh, I know, but I think you actually are going to have to go for Jack Hughes. Like I think because I think LA and Chicago are going to. I think St. Louis might. So,
I think Philadelphia should.
But I don't know what we never know what it really entails. I'm a huge hater of this whole concept. But we don't know what it entails.
I know what it entails: losing.
Yeah.
Well, it entails losing, but how do you lose? And I guess that's the question we can ask today. A little bit. How does
the Flyers? You just keep playing the way you're playing. That's all you do.
The Flyers don't really have to do anything. They will lose on their own.
Yeah. You've mastered it, folks. Just stay.
No, I'm laughing because they're not. They're not that bad. They're not a team that will lose. They're not going to lose.
Where's the proof?
Hold on. I was in that camp before the season started and saw the team on paper. Having watched this team through 29 games this year, I am no longer in that camp, and they are losing for a reason. Now, you could change the coach, you could change the goalie, you could change a defenseman, and that might get them close. But we're looking at Pittsburgh too, who's going to eventually wake up here and start playing a little better.
Right.
This is a situation where it's almost like St. Louis a few years ago when I told you when they limped into the playoffs, that was a horrible thing for them when they had made the playoffs for like 20 straight years, whatever the number was. Yeah. And then they went on a big, downslide. The Flyers might as well go on this downslide for this year and see where they're at and then worry about things in free agency, because right now they're in a situation where their defense is so spotty that they have a new coach. They don't have a new head coach, but they have a new coach who's coaching that defense, and it's still not working. So it's not something that's fixable even in the next week or two, I don't think.
They should do what they did in 06, 07 and just let it happen. Don't try. They made the trade for Marty Baron. They made free agent signings, but they finished dead last and they lost the lottery and lost Patrick Kane, but they still got JVR, and JVR is a pretty good player who they ended up trading. But there are good players at the top of this draft. So even if they don't get Jack Hughes, it may not be as good as Jack Hughes, but they'll be pretty good. You need to add those pieces, those young guys, to add to Patrick, to add to those.
In retrospect, this was coming last year. It's just the loser point is what got them into the playoffs. And if you remember when they were on their losing streak, and Dave Haxtell said a few times, well, at least we got that point.
Yeah.
He knew that was important just to get in the playoffs, but the fans were mad because they were losing.
There's quite a few teams that can say that, though. I mean, that loser,
no question,
keeps up in this thing.
I think what in the end did in Ron Hextall is the expectation for this year after surprisingly making the playoffs last year, because they said, okay, let's go out and sign JVR and add him to that group. And if we add a guy who scores 36 goals and we have Elliott and Neuvirth stay healthy, then we'll be better than we were last year. We'll make the playoffs. And it doesn't work that way. Things don't happen the same way the next year, and everything is falling apart. And I think right now you embrace the falling apart. You don't try to fight against it and try to have Chuck Fletcher go out and make these quick moves to try to patchwork things. Embrace the fact that you're at the bottom and take the chance and get that franchise player.
I know that your team's had success doing this, but I think that, but I don't think that these Flyers were where those Leafs were. I think that at the end of the day, I mean, this is a team that does have Claude Giroux on it. It does have, Nolan Patrick on it. It has Provorov.
It has talent. I'm not saying it doesn't.
This is not a team that should finish last in the NHL.
But it doesn't matter. You know how it is, Zach. Sometimes you could look at a team and say, yes, they are talented, but the mix is bad. And right now, And it may not even be the mix. It could be the message. And
I mean, that's what we don't know. And I think that.
But the coach is still there, Eck, and so the message is the same. And for as long as the message is the same, you're going to see the same result out of this team. They're going to lose 3 or 4 horrific games, and they're going to win one that you don't expect, and then everybody gets excited, like, hey, maybe this is the start of it. And then they start losing again, and then you end up 3-4-3 like they are in their last 10.
A team like Tampa Bay finished in the conference finals in 2011, and a couple years later, they finished almost dead last in the league with all the talent that they had and got Jonathan Drouin with a 3rd overall pick. Good teams can have bad years, and when they do, they need to take advantage of that because you can get yourself a franchise player at an entry-level deal for 3 years along with all the talent that you already have. It's like hitting the lottery.
Well, yeah, it is.
Not the draft lottery, but the actual lottery, the money lottery.
Yeah, and it's very possible. But like I said, and there's no indication. I mean, if they wanted to go that way, they would have stayed the course with Hextall and Hackstall, and I don't think they're staying the course with both of those guys at all. I mean, obviously they're not staying the course with Hextall, and they are not going to stay the course with Hackstall very much longer. I think the Hackstall thing comes down to, like I've said before, it comes down to Quenneville and what he decides to do after Christmas. And if Quenneville says no to them, he's not going to come to them after Christmas, then I think you will see them go for somebody else out there. I don't think they're going to. I don't think
they'll go for somebody else. But here's the thing. Again, we're looking at. So you're pushing it another week or 4 or 5 games.
I'm totally opposed to this. I'm just saying what's happening. I mean, I don't.
No, I know. But I'm saying even if Quenneville comes in, they going on a 10-0 run.
Right. And Say they wait until New Year's. Say they wait for Quenneville to finally make his decision, and it's like December 30th, and he says no, and they're still at 26 or 27 points at the bottom of the Eastern Conference, and you're closing in on the halfway mark, and you're probably 10 points out of a wild card spot. At some point, you have to say to yourself, it makes no sense to try to make moves to try to catch up and make up that, what you probably can't make up. You have to play 650 hockey.
I do agree, but I don't think. I mean, I'm not saying that I disagree with it. I don't ever agree with teams tanking, but I'm not saying I disagree that that could very well happen. It's just that the Flyers aren't acting like that's going to happen when I talk to people, because they're going about it the way that they are pretty dead set on making trades before December 19th. Actually, like before December 19th is the trade freeze, which is the 19th would be, what day is that? Wednesday of next week, I guess. Yeah, I think Wednesday of next week.
Yeah, I think so.
You're muted, Mike. Wednesday of next week.
Next Wednesday. Yep.
Yeah, so they are talking like they're going to make moves before that. I don't know, and that they want to actually go out there and make these moves and give the team and the fans hope that this season is not a wash.
Okay, but here's the hopeless part. Right now, if you look at it, Pittsburgh is ahead of them. Right, forget about the other teams: Detroit, New York, Carolina, Ottawa, New Jersey, Florida. They probably are out of it. But the issue is, you get one more team from the Atlantic in this, and Buffalo gets pushed down. I got to tell you, the Flyers are not even going to be able to catch Buffalo after a while.
Yeah, I agree. No, there's no question. I'm totally agree. I mean, I'm just saying, I'm not saying that this is the right mode. But I don't know what the right mode is. And I just legitimately looking at these teams, I think some teams, why I brought up the Flyers, is some teams will approach this differently. Like, I do think the Kings and Blues will approach this like, okay, we're going to bottom out and go for this. I think that you're going to see. I'm not sure about Chicago. Like, that's one thing I don't know if Chicago will actually. I mean, right now Chicago has a good chance at this because they have such a terrible record. But I'm not sure that they're a team that's going to do that. That's going to allow themselves to bottle that.
I think they'll do it in a limited way. I don't think that they're not going to they're not going to trade Taves and Kane. They're the cornerstone players.
Right.
They can't. They probably can't trade Seabrook because that contract is so onerous. Duncan Keith, they probably have to retain at least $2 million on a deal that's I think has another 3 years. He's at 5 and he's 5.5 and he's at 35 years old. So, there are teams out there that would like to have him for a couple years, but I don't think they want him past that. So they'd have to make it worth their while. Maybe trade Brandon Saad or maybe trade Artem Anisimov. Clear out the middle of the road guys, but Yeah, I mean, you're just limited to doing whatever you can with them because some of the those big contracts like Seabrook, they can't be moved.
No.
Yeah.
Not unless you're eating so much money that you say, you know what, we're better
What's the
holding
point?
on to the player.
Yeah, you'd be better off like hoping that he retires early because he doesn't want to play for a bottom feeder for the next 3 or 4 years. Now you look at St. Louis. I don't think they can move O'Reilly. I don't think they want to move Tarasenko unless he's really that much of a problem. I look at the roster. Alex Steen is declining, and he makes 5.75 for the next 2 years after this year. So that's going to be tough. I don't think they want to move Schwartz. It's Braden Shen, one more year at 5.12. Good luck moving David Perron unless he wants to go back to Vegas. And then it's the rental guys like Bouwmeester, Maroon, maybe Bortuzzo, and the defenseman. So they don't have a lot of wiggle room. They don't have I don't know where, they may put everybody out there, but I think that, I'm not sure what return they get for these guys who have long-term and big money and aren't worth the long-term and the big money.
Right. I agree. All right, moving on a little bit. I saw this interesting stat you guys would like. There's only one team in the NHL has more than 3 players who have 30 points. Okay, that's a lot of points. So obviously, so you have 3 30-point guys, but a lot of teams there are a bunch of teams that have 3 30-point guys. But there's only one team that has more than 30-point time. More than 3 of them, and they have 5 of them. Can you name that team?
Toronto.
Nope.
Nashville.
Nope.
Colorado.
Nope. Really interesting. This is kind of surprising. Look up Toronto.
This is the part of the show that I detest. I say it every time, and I detest this.
But people out there love questions. Not Tampa. This is a really shocking.
Minnesota.
If you say the Carolina Hurricanes, I'm going to say that you've had
Minnesota.
No. Nope.
I don't go no. But all right.
Not Minnesota. This team has a 42-point guy, a 38 guy, a 37-point guy, a 34.
No, I'm done.
Just give us the team.
The Calgary Flames.
Okay.
Which is I know this from watching the game last night and doing some research on the game that was going on. But yeah, I mean, Gaudreau is 42, Monahan 38, Tkachuk 37, Lindholm 34, Giordano 32. And someone wrote I wasn't on the show yesterday. But someone wrote in the comments yesterday that we needed to mention you guys needed to mention Giordano, I guess, when you were talking about the Norris candidates. And
believe me, it was just a quick
mention, and I'm not sure he's quite there yet. I'm going to look at it now.
I think he is this year. I mean, he's having an unbelievable year this year. He really is. And
he had a great shorthanded goal last night.
We're talking to a lot of people. We're talking to a lot of people.
Conversation, yes.
I mean. So, along these lines, the LA Kings currently only have 7 players who will project to have 30 more points by the end of the year. So think about that. I mean, that's
crazy.
So, I mean, this is how, they really are along the lines of
the Carolina Hurricanes are second worst in the NHL with 72 goals in 29 games. That's an average of 2.2 or 2.3 per game, which I think LA is the only team below them. I wanted to get to the Thomas Dundon comments because I thought they were particularly ridiculous. But when you go out and say, well, we want snipers and we would rather lose games 5-4 than 2-1.
I'm going to read Dundon's comments, everybody, so you can get an idea of what Mike's talking about here, okay?
Go ahead.
The results are worse than we probably would have expected. So, yeah, it's not very good, Dundon says. Don Waddell, Kane's general manager, told me to be positive, but I can't when I can't be positive when we lose. When I lose, he says, but I can't when I lose. He says the team is good enough to win, but we're not good enough to be great yet. We can win because of the difference is so small, but we're not as good as we think we can be. But if you try to do it fast, you'll be bad, and I want to be good for a long time, Dundon says. He says the Hurricanes will focus on offensive skill. Defense can be bought. He says, we won't be drafting defense in the first round as long as I'm here, he adds. Noting that the Hurricanes are now in the market for a sniper. I've got to have more offense. I want to lose 5-4, not 2-1, Dundon says. If we lose 5-4, at least I'll have fun losing.
All right, so here's the thing.
Okay.
First thing that I hear that bothers me in that statement is we're not going to draft defense. Right. You could say that.
Right.
And if you are really going to pass up a premier defenseman in the draft on the board, which is what everybody wants, regardless of how many guys you think you have right now, because a few injuries could clear that out, or a few non-payments to, like, Justin Falk gets traded or whatever, that could all change. And it doesn't change overnight when you draft. So if you just stop drafting defensemen and then all of a sudden do what the Islanders did and draft all defensemen one year, it's a recipe for disaster.
Right.
I think the crazy thing about that comment is that when you look at defensemen who are stars around the league, almost all of them are drafted. Like, defensemen don't move around. I mean,
I think when
you actually can get a sniper. You actually can go out and get a sniper. It's not easy, but you have a better chance of going out and getting a sniper than you have.
I think what he's talking about in terms of we can go out and buy defensemen is in free agency, which I think is ludicrous because
in free agency you can't, because defensemen don't make it to free agency first off.
Yeah, but if they do, it ends up being an overpriced situation like a Shattenkirk, or the own team like the Capitals, re-signing at $8 million. I mean,
you're right. When you buy defensemen, you actually pay a lot more for a defenseman than you do forwards. And
now his statement would be fine if he said, we're not going to draft defensemen for the next few years because they're one of the deepest teams in the league in terms of defensemen right now. Their top 6 are really good, and they've got 2 former first-round picks in Hayden Fleury and Jake Bean playing in Charlotte, and they got Adam Fox, who's having a phenomenal year with Harvard. So they're really deep organizationally on defense, and I get that. But when he comes out and says we need snipers, what the hell did you just trade in the summer? You traded Jeff Skinner for literally almost nothing, and you traded Elias Lindholm to Calgary. So you had snipers and you traded them.
Yeah, but
what are you talking about?
To be fair to him for a second, those guys are having much better years than they had in Calgary, both of them. I mean, Lindholm is having a great year.
But I predicted with Lindholm.
And the thing about Lindholm that people forget, he's part of the Hanifin trade, right? The Hamilton Hanifin trade.
Yeah, right.
Almost like a throw-in in that trade. And really, I was told he was in that trade clearly because Peter said that he wanted him because of his time in Calgary. He knew what Lindholm was all about, and he wanted him there. So that was a crazy great move by Bill Peters, right? So
but also what Tom Dundon is telling us, that if he'd have gotten the first overall pick last year, he would have drafted Svechnikov over Dahlin. And right now, today, Dahlin has 1 more point this season than Svechnikov. No, so, again, why would you do that?
Yeah,
I'm not disputing what you just said, but the other thing is that Lindholm was a restricted free agent, and they didn't want to pay him. He was asking for a lot more money than they thought he was worth. So they included him in the deal, and they took back an expiring contract into Michael Furland, who's having a pretty good year with Carolina, and will probably be a rental move somewhere, right? Because they won't re-sign him. They saved over $10 million in salary by moving out Skinner, by moving out potentially what they would have had to sign Lindholm for. That's why they did it. This is a organization running on picking pennies and nickels, and that's so he wants snipers, but he wants cheap snipers. He doesn't want to have to pay for goals. It doesn't work that way, folks. It really doesn't.
I'm getting GMs to go there too, which is the other thing you have to remember. Why? Because the GMs interview with him and they know that this is the way he sees things. Hey,
I gotta tell you, if I'm LA, I call them up tomorrow and say, "You want Ilya Kovalchuk? He's a sniper."
Yeah, right, yeah. Oh, yeah, you think Waddell would do that, though? You forget.
Okay, we're still talking about Don Waddell. I don't forget.
Waddell, Atlanta Thrashers, Don Waddell.
I understand.
And Kovalchuk literally made him insane. There's just no way in the world Waddell's going anywhere close.
The hockey world
they maybe San Jose will offer him Evander Kane.
Here's the funny thing. The hockey world is a weird thing, and the owner, in this case, would definitely overrule the GM if he wanted the player.
Yeah, I mean, maybe it's possible that so I've dealt with a lot of owners. Some of my best sources in this league are owners, and I always think that they are the best sources because they are the ones who know what's happening more than. I mean, they really. If an owner wants to get something done, there have been trades that I've broken in time that everyone else said would never happen because the owner told me flat out they were going to do it. And the owners have the last say on these things. So I've talked to a lot of owners, all different kinds of old school, new school owners. And let's put Dundon in the new school type owner. He's the younger owner who who really loves the idea of owning a hockey team. He's made his money elsewhere. This is a fun hobby for him. He's enjoying it.
Sure.
So I've seen two different kinds of owners. I don't want to use their names because it would be wrong, but that are like this. Okay, one had a GM who was very much a puppet of his and ran a team, pretty well. And I thought really well, actually. And things went, and he said a lot of these same kind of things, but not publicly. Like a lot of the same kind of things you're hearing Dundon say were said publicly because owners get excited. They are fans. They're just people. They're just guys. Some of them played hockey. Some didn't play hockey. Some have knowledge about hockey. Some don't have knowledge about hockey. But they have to. But this guy was very hands-on. Had a GM who was allowing him to be very hands-on, and they didn't really work out. Then another owner I know who's newer school, who is also, really fired up about having a team, is more the kind of owner who sits back and lets his hockey people run things and listens and enjoys listening in on the meetings and enjoys listening in on the way they do things. And he's like, that's really interesting. And once in a while we'll throw something in there and say, hey, we need to go. I really think we have a shot. Let's basically. He always described it as a dial. Like I was talking to him right before the trade deadline, and he was, I told him we can go do something, or I told him we shouldn't do anything. I would hear that. That's what an owner would say. And he wouldn't say what he would do or whether they wouldn't do anything or not. And sometimes he would tell me, I told him not that we shouldn't do anything, and then they would turn around and do something. And then I would talk to him later, and he's like, yeah, well, this deal came up the last second week. It was a good deal for us. But so I would get a sort of a feel going in to the trade deadline from this owner by that. And then the other owner who I'm talking about, the first owner, was always like, oh, we're going to do something. We're definitely going to do something. And he didn't always do something. But he was more of like along the Dundon line, I think, of things. But all of this was being said behind closed doors. And all this is stuff I couldn't write about. Mm-hmm. So the idea that is, that Dundon is like putting this out there publicly.
Yeah, in interviews,
right,
on radio.
He makes himself look amateur, and he makes his organization look amateur to the rest of the hockey world. But in Carolina, this might be flying really well. And that's the thing. Like, you have to remember this kind of city that you're talking about here.
Have you looked at the attendance?
I know the attendance isn't good. And that's why you might be seeing this. I mean,
maybe, but there is one thing, like there's a very famous thing, like you never want to, whatever kind of strategist you are, you never want to reveal your hand, whether you're a poker player, whether you're in the army, whether you're and he is revealing his hand.
Right. He in a way.
But he's definitely revealing his hand. But you're right. The stuff he's saying is not really controversial because of what Mike said. Mike
he just helped me in the draft. Are you kidding me?
He's
already told me in the first round he's not taking a defenseman.
Yeah, no, but that's not controversial because of what Mike said. And that again, that could change. But like Mike said, it's not controversial for him to say he's not going to draft a defenseman. He's stacked on defense. He's okay. He can do that.
Today, you don't draft for today.
I know.
That's what he doesn't understand.
No, he might. You're probably right. He doesn't understand. He might not, but at the same time, you have to look at the city that you're dealing with. You have to look at the attendance being down. You have to look at.
But he has no patience. If he's a guy with no patience, which right now he's acting like he doesn't understand that the guy he takes today will take 4 or 5 years to make it to the team. Right. In 4 or 5 years, you could have one injury, you could lose 2 guys to free agency, and all of a sudden, defense isn't the strong suit of your team anymore.
Well, here's the thing.
I would admit flat out that I haven't really talked to him very much. I mean, and I've tried to even get close to him through other owners. And the interesting thing is the owners usually all know each other. Mm-hmm. When I've talked to other owners and say, hey, can you maybe set me up with like Tom Dundon so I could talk to him, or tell him I'm a good guy or whatever, and we could have a conversation. Yeah. The owners don't know him either. That's the more fascinating thing about Dundon than anything.
And you know what, Eck? That's a problem because in a sense right now he's out on a wing. He's a loose cannon. Not saying that he's saying, he is saying things that I don't think the NHL wants him to say. Like, he goes on Toronto radio a couple days ago and he advocates what we've heard out there in terms of some owners at the Board of Governors meeting saying they want an expanded playoff system of 20 teams or a change in the current playoff format. Right. He goes out there. Bill Daly is on the same show today, and he shoots all of that down basically. Why? Because all of this stuff is going to be CBA negotiated stuff, and if they put it out there that they want certain things, then that's giving ammo to the PA. So he's out there probably saying things that they don't want him to say, but maybe he doesn't know any better, or he doesn't
I think
care?
for that he does, but he doesn't care. I think he's going to be one of those guys at the Board of Governors meeting that a lot of the owners are going to be sort of like afraid of, because you don't know which way he's going to go as far as voting. But forgetting about that for a minute, when he took over the team, he said certain things, right? And then he's gotten the hard lesson of what hockey life is like. And maybe Jeff Skinner said, I don't want to play here, so that's why they traded him. But right now, they're worse than they were last year. That's a fact.
Yes.
Saying that you're going to go out and get a sniper is great, but when you're dealing from a position of weakness, it's going to be harder to do than what he is basically saying out on radio interviews. So this is a lot of pressure.
You have to admit the guy is a bit of a showman. Okay, let's
yes, but what does this do to Rob Brindamore as the coach? You don't think Rob Brindamore is trying to get these guys to score more goals?
Well, I think it's something I talked to somebody the other day. It's like, yeah, Brindamore, with what he's going through there, and what Hockett's going through in Arizona, man, these ex-Flyer players are really having a tough time of it.
And he's not exactly doing favors for Don Waddell in the sense that, okay, you're going to go out there and say we want a sniper. Well, one, you're not getting a sniper for Justin Falk with an expiring contract after next year. If you're talking about trading from your area of strength, which is defense, you're talking about trading a Slavin or a Pesci or Dougie Hamilton, which they probably won't do since they just traded him, just traded for him. Right. So you're talking about trading one of your top 4 defensemen for a sniper that you already had in Skinner that you didn't want to re-sign.
Want to play there, they had no choice. I really think that they had very little choice.
Or Lindholm, who you didn't want to pay because
I said the best hire for Tom Dundon would have been to hire someone like a Scotty Bowman type to sort of guide him through the business. Not Don Waddell, no offense to Don, but Don is basically doing what Tom wants. Remember when I said that would be a good thing, a good hire? It still would be a good hire.
And I think that could happen, okay? Because talking to some people, I think that could happen. I think we could see that.
He needs that.
I think Waddell is exhausted and beat up by this. I mean, Waddell is the epitome of a good guy. Like, he's absolutely a fantastic, and he's a
company. Michael Scott. He's the Michael Scott of hockey.
Yeah,
he's a company man. That's what he is.
Well, no, yeah, but he also is incredibly smart. He's a really sharp guy. So I wouldn't quite go down the Michael Scott path with him. But I think that he also is doing this. He's doing the job of the president and a GM for one salary, right? So this is and let's face it, he did not get a GM, and it had a lot to do with the fact he wanted to pay him, what Arizona was paying their GM, which experienced GMs, who are not 28 or 30 years old, won't take, right? So that's what the issue is. He's got to pay a GM to get this happen. But if he pays by paying a GM, by bringing in a real hockey guy, he also can't get away with what he's doing now. So there's a lot of different things to play into this, like the showmanship part of it. Okay, let's look at what he's done. I mean, the Carolina had this whole crazy winning celebration thing that was very scripted at the beginning of the year that they were doing. They are December 23rd. They're playing as the Hartford Whalers, which everyone wants to see. I mean, these are all he's embraced.
Not people in Harvard. Not people in Hartford.
Are they having a problem with it?
I know people. I know friends who are from the Hartford area who, when I told them that they heard about this, they were pissed.
It's just funny because I have a friend who's actually flying to the game. That's how excited he is. He's a Hartford fan.
Okay.
So I think it's all over the map with that. But I think it's
all over the map.
I think that he has shown that he's got a little bit of like P.T. Barnum in him. You know what I mean? Like, he's doing, and therefore when he comes out with these statements like this, I can't help but think, that they might be a little bit calculated.
Mike, the chat room is disagreeing with you about Michael Scott, because Michael Scott did do a lot of effective things. They're ripping you now for your portrayal, for your ripping on Michael Scott, and I don't blame him.
I love Michael Scott. I love The Office. I've watched the entire thing several times, but I don't think that I just don't. I know Waddell, so I can't put him into the same frame, in the same place as a Michael Scott. Like, I could try to find you somebody else in the NHL that's like Michael Scott. I definitely know that exists. If I gave me a couple minutes, I could definitely do that. I just wouldn't say it's Waddell. So I think that what we're going to see with Dundon is, I mean, I kind of enjoy this. Like, I to say it's.
Of course, you enjoy covering it. We all enjoy it.
And I think
if you're a Carolina fan, you are not enjoying this.
Yeah, this is enjoying chaos. This is like being Nero and playing the fiddle as Rome is burning. That's what it is.
I want to know. I want Carolina fans, if you're listening to this show, I want you to make a comment and tell us whether you enjoy this or not, because I think that some of this because I've heard some people, I've read some things in chat rooms and stuff like that out there, or message boards, that's where they actually like the fact that their owner has a little bit of an attitude and is coming out and saying this kind of stuff. They want, I mean, so yes, in the old school hockey universe, this is not the way to do it. Okay, and what's happened? He doesn't hire people, which is like the crazy thing to me. That's the problem. But who else can we think of that doesn't hire his staff and makes crazy statements all the time?
Okay, can I tell you?
Donald Trump.
Sure, but can I tell you this?
Yeah.
You go on Twitter, they are comparing Tom Dundon to Michael Jordan, and it's actually a very good comparison because Michael Jordan is doing a horrible job with the Charlotte Hornets. They're both in that area, and they've seen this act.
Okay, so these are Carolina fans comparing him?
Yes. And there's writers too. The writers and fans that say, hey, look what Michael Jordan, a guy with a lot of money who actually played the game, has done with this team. And the answer is nothing. And so they don't want to see it go down that path. Now, I will tell you, they called up Yanni Kukkonen, who is a really good young player, and he might be ready for the NHL because Stahl's on he's going on the injured reserve. That could help him, but he's not a sniper. But that could help him.
Right. I mean,
he can score.
I mean, it's funny that Mrazek's the goalie there. There's a lot of things that are interesting about this team, like that Mrazek. And it's funny when you watch the highlights of the night before, how many, it's amazing to me how many Mrazek saves you'll see. Like he will make some incredible saves.
He will. He always does.
He's just got this ability. And yet, he's giving up 4 or 5 goals. But,
at the end of the day, right, you look at it, he gives up 3-4 goals every game.
When he plays in the night, it's quite often a Mrazek save.
Yeah, of the 4 goals that Toronto scored on Tuesday, I think only one was his fault. One, Dougie Hamilton shot it into his own net. Another one, there was a rebound.
He doesn't give up a lot of bad goals. Like, I'm not saying that either. He just gives up a lot of goals. He does, but he does have the ability to make some unbelievable saves. Like,
right, so I'm going to read you a tweet from a guy named Brett Finger, and when you look up his profile, he writes at Canes Country, and he goes, Tom Dundon should be included into the North Carolina Sports Hall of Fame based solely on him saying that they won't draft a defenseman in the first round anymore.
Okay, so
that is a college student.
So is he saying he likes it? He likes that?
He doesn't like it.
Well, it sounds like he does like it.
Oh, if he does, then he's
saying it should be put into the Sports Hall of Fame.
If he's related to Jeff Finger, that might be an explanation because if he is,
I think that what he's saying there is
maybe you're right. Maybe that is a positive on the guy's part, but okay, I didn't read it that way, but you might be right.
It's one thing about professional sports that I've learned after watching many teams do it over many years. When you draft for need, you pay. Meaning, usually you make more mistakes. You draft the best players out there, and if the best player, when Carolina comes up in the first round next year, is a defenseman, if they take a forward, they are stupid.
Well,
they really are.
I mean, listen, you can. I mean, let's talk. Go back to Edmonton, for example. Like there were times when Edmonton kept drafting forwards, and we were talking about, because the best player was definitely a forward, and Edmonton was taking the best player that was available.
Should they have taken Ryan Murray over Nail Yakupov based on what's happened? I'd say sure.
All right, so here's another tweet, Eck, and this is
back then.
This is a verified person. She's a news reporter for ABC down in Carolina,
right?
And she asked somebody who was taking in their first game if she enjoyed the first game, and her response was, do they always lose like that? And then Doug Abrams, a guy who I know who is very into Carolina Hurricanes online and he writes, well, yes, over the past decade, the Hurricanes organization has managed to excel at being mediocre. So until the owner, Tom Dundon, puts in more cash for a proven head coach, a real NHL goalie, and a 20-goal scorer, she can come to PNC Arena to see the Canes lose a lot of games. Like, that is the feeling of the hardcore fan base. I'm telling you.
And that is, all that was true before Dundon, though, and it's true now. I mean, what I need to find, and we need to do, and I could do some research. We need to find people who don't like the way he's doing what I'm not convinced about is that the way he's handling it by coming out in the media and saying this kind of stuff, and by having this. I'm not convinced that people are hating that. Like, I think that they agree. I think there's no question he needs to spend money. But the things you just read to me about Dundon there, I could find other teams that have the same argument, the same complaints. You got to hire a real coach. You got to spend money to get a scorer.
Well,
the idea here is that is what he is saying, because the attitude he's throwing out there, this has always been one of my issues with.
I'm reading the nicer tweets, Zach. I'm just
No, I
letting
know.
you know.
I'm sure, but this is always been one of my issues with. We live in a sport that's dominated by the Northeast and Canada, and the attitude that we have here in the Northeast, the attitude we have in Canada about this guy's crazy. This is ridiculous. He's got to be more polite. He's got to be more real. He can't come out and say this kind of stuff. You let the hockey people run everything. But then when you go to other markets, sometimes I found this in Nashville big time early on, they just had a different expectation of what they thought their general manager should do and say, and this is,
but
I think that we always throw this hockey thing on top of it, because we all dwell in the circles with all these, with the Dragers and the Elliot Friedmans and the, Kevin Allens and all that stuff, that all like have been part of this hockey world forever, and they do things the right way, hockey way.
Right. Okay. So here's a good one. There's a guy named Omar Abdelgawad who said, remember when Tom Dundon said that analytics were going to drive this trams decisions, probably teams. He meant to put teams decisions. Who nixed that idea? And then he wrote fire them, but whatever. But here's the thing. Brett Finger said Jordan Stahl has 1 point and assist in 67 minutes of power play ice time this season. Remember, we brought that up the other day.
Yeah.
That's mind-boggling that if you do have an analytics department, that it hasn't changed.
Yeah, that hasn't changed. But then again, are you going to take Jordan Stahl off the power? I mean, he's one of your talented guys.
And let me just clarify a point. Let me just clarify a point from before. Russ, the 2012 draft, Yakupov was far and away the number 1 ranked player, but Murray was thought to be a pretty good defensive prospect, and Edmonton's crying need.
Juniors, let's be fair. He was great in juniors. He was.
Right. Murray was getting comparisons like Scott Niedermayer at the time.
Yeah.
Right. So it wouldn't have been out of the realm of possibility, or it wouldn't have been a stupid pick for a team that was desperate for defense to, instead of drafting another forward on top of Taylor Hall, on top of Jordan Eberle, on top of Nugent Hopkins, to draft the highest ranked defenseman. Right. I mean, it wasn't, so yeah, I like I said,
no, it wouldn't have been. And that's exactly what I'm talking about. Like that, they did that. And I thought that they
didn't do it. They didn't do it.
They picked, what I'm saying is they did the equivalent of Carolina picking another defenseman in this draft. Like they did that equivalent because they were loaded up on forward. They went and picked the best forward, Edmonton did. And they avoided the fact that their actual would have been better for them to probably get a defenseman. Now at the time, I remember Yakupov, like, Columbus wanted Yakupov in the worst possible way. Remember, this was going on. Like they really thought that he was going to be the key to their whole thing, and they lost out in the lottery, and it really pissed them off. And then there were people saying right before that though that they still might get him because Edmonton really probably shouldn't take another forward. But then everyone said Yakupov's so good they had to go for him. Hindsight's 2020. Okay, that could happen with any player, but the
answer is you take the highest rated player that you have in the organization. You don't go reaching for something. And Edmonton went reaching for the extra offense, where I can guarantee you
That wasn't a reach. That was the guy. That was the best.
No. I get that he was the guy that we all thought would be number 1. What I'm trying to say is I guarantee you, scouting wise, there were plenty of guys that wanted Murray, and they obviously were overruled.
Exactly.
Well, and that people don't remember, that people often forget that, was it the Stamkos thing or no, it was the Tavares Hedman thing was controversial at the time. Like you remember the Islanders, there
was that campaign that basically said Tavares couldn't skate.
Right. And that
was baloney. Nobody
needed defense. The Islanders needed defense so much.
Nobody bought that act. Nobody in the world thought
but I remember very specifically talking to people in Tampa, and they even up till the day before they were interviewing Tavares harder than they usually would.
Were you talking to Oren Cools? Is that who you were talking to?
Different people down there. Oren Cools was the owner. I'm talking to people who were part of the
I'm just saying that regime, I'm not sure you should bring up as an example, is my point.
That regime. Okay, now you can say what you want to about that regime.
That regime hired Barry Melrose. That regime had Steve Stamkos playing 6 minutes a game in his rookie year. Go ahead. The floor is yours.
Yeah, the floor is mine. That regime built a hell of a player base. I mean, the player base. Those players, the year after that Vinnick takes over, they went to the Stanley Cup Finals. I mean, don't forget, like
semifinals,
right? Semifinals, and then finals a couple years after that. And if you remember, I mean, and a lot of those players were in the Brian Lawton's GM.
A lot of the scouts were there already, Eck. It's not like Oren Cool's brought in a brand new scouting
staff. This is not Oren Cool. It's Brian Lawton. Let's go with Lawton. Okay, Lawton's the guy. He was the guy in there, and he was, and they don't often get enough credit for like some of the
Lawton. I think Lawton did some good things, but
Kucherov is Lawton, right? Stamkos, obviously, Stamkos was obvious, but
it's whoever their scout.
Vasilevsky, I think, was Lawton too. I mean, I think it's their scouts, but then the scouts report to the GM makes decisions. So I'm just saying that regime gets really ripped poorly. Honestly, I really do believe that. But because Yzerman is so beloved that he came in and could do no wrong, right?
No, it's not that. It's just that you look at some of these other things. Like I said, Melrose is a coach.
The coaching, yes.
They had some big missteps, Zach. They did.
And then Rick Tocchet.
They had some issues. I agree with that completely. But all I'm saying is, that I mean, I am not here to defend Dundon. I'm in that spot right now because I'm trying to say that I think that there's a different. I think we should all look at it a little bit differently than we naturally want to, because I think we often get the fact in the culture of hockey that surrounds us, and that there's another way of looking at it. And I really don't know that Carolina. I want Carolina fans to respond. If you're out there, respond to this and let us know what you think about this.
Doing a good job trying to raise the marketing of the game.
Yeah, I think
he's doing a good job with that. Don't get me wrong.
Do you enjoy this? I mean, there's not much going on with the team right now, but are you enjoying the fact that Dundon is coming out and making these statements, that Dundon is going on Leafs lunch and, trying? I mean, there's the weird things he's doing up in, not Leafs lunch, but whatever they call it.
He was on Leafs lunch. And it was because Carolina was playing Toronto. But I think that he sort of, like I said, he talked out of school, and I don't think it does him in the league and him for his team any favors.
Well, the worst place to have this attitude, the worst place to be this outside the box would be Leafs lunch. Let's just
when they have Leafs lunch, is that at the 67 Club?
I was on Leaf lunch, I was on Leaf lunch.
It's not at the Anchor Bar, I'll tell you that.
I've been on Leafs lunch. I was on Leafs lunch with Merrick and I forget who else, but I was on there.
It's a great show. I'm just kidding. It's a great show.
I enjoyed it. I really enjoyed it. But
that was my second favorite show. I used to call all the time.
No, and it's still a great show, but it is definitely the hockey culture. Okay, so there's no question that Dundon goes on there. They are definitely looking at it through a old school hockey culture, Eddie Shore way of looking at the world. Okay, that's where they are. But that's just the reality. So Carolina teams like that, they do things differently. And remember, that Waddell came from Atlanta, same kind of situation, right? Raleigh's a much better sports city than Atlanta was, but Atlanta is just a horrible sports city.
Before we end the show here, there's 8 games tonight, and obviously I think the one that most people are going to watch or try to watch is the two top teams, the two top records in the NHL.
Yeah, it's gonna be a good game.
And Tampa Bay and Toronto. And Vasilevsky, and you get this, I think the record for Louis Domingue, while the record of Tampa Bay while Vasilevsky was out and Louis Domingue was the number 1 goalie, was 12-2 or 12-3.
Yeah.
Which is a testament to why this is the best team in the league, because I thought they were going to fall back at least a little bit and maybe play a little over 500, with Louis Domingue, who's not the greatest goaltender. He's a decent number 2, but not a number 1 in the NHL. And they just outscored their problems and got decent performances out of Domingue. And now they're still, I think, 6 points ahead of Toronto, and Toronto is going at a ridiculous pace, and they're still not going to win the division unless Tampa Bay slips up. Now, Vasilevsky comes in, and he could be rusty, but it's going to be interesting to see the two big offenses, teams that like to play wide open hockey, whether it'll be like a 7-6 barn burner or will disappoint and be like a 2-1 game.
No, it's going to be a great game. I mean, it's down in Emily at the arena in Tampa. I've been down there. That arena is really fun. It's a really fun place.
That scoreboard is ridiculous.
Yeah, you guys have been down there too. It's a really great place to see a game. and it's got to be like, if you're a hockey, it would be distracting to me. Like, like I'm going to be in like a week and a half. I'm going to be down in Florida for a week between Christmas and New Year's. Like I usually am visiting my in-laws, and like you leave an area that's so cold like this, and you go down there. It is so. I can't imagine like the hockey players and they step. Guys living in Toronto stepping off the plane on there. They just must be like, oh my god, this got to be the greatest thing in the world.
Yeah, I wish I knew what that was like.
I know. It must be distracting. Like I mean, I can't help but think you want to go outside and not take your afternoon nap. You just want to do something. I mean, and I know a lot of them play golf and stuff like that in situations like that, but
Well, and I don't think any of the Leafs players will be playing golf on this tour because we'll on the show in a second. But right now, it's the annual. Usually, it's the dads trip where they have the dads come along. But the Leafs are doing the moms trip, so all the moms are making sure that the players are probably eating their lunch and getting their naps and all that nice stuff.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing I want to throw out there too before we go is the U.S. Jimmy Johansson, who passed away last year. And got the Lester Patrick Award yesterday, and that was in Nashville. It was really I talked to some people who were there at that ceremony.
His wife accepted it. It was real nice.
Yep, and it's really cool. I mean, it was a really well done. I mean, Bill Daly was there, and Bill Daly is such an important person in the NHL, and people have no idea. He was there, and he's had a lot of great stuff to do with the USA Hockey, and other people who were part of USA Hockey was there. Waddell was there. Don Waddell's a good, he's a big hockey US hockey player. Bill Zito, who was recently in the news a lot here, who recently coached the U.S. or was the GM of the U.S. team that went to the World Championships, got a bronze medal last year. He was there. There's an interesting thing happening in USA Hockey, and that it seems to be like a new guard coming in. But Johansson was so vital in for so many years, and definitely, I know you dealt with him, Russ. I dealt with him. He was really top-notch person. Definitely a shame, but absolutely wonderful that they got the Lester Patrick.
No, he was a great guy. I had some small conversations with him. I've interviewed him. I saw him in really great times, winning a championship. No, he was a cool guy.
I had a really fun lunch with him and Brian Burke one time, the three of us, and Berkey just cracked him up. And you could tell he didn't, but you could tell Johansson was like, okay, I've got to have this guy here because Burke's such an important person, but at the same time, he's just so weird that it was just funny. It was one of those really funny conversations. So anyway, that's all there is for that. Have a good time. Enjoy the games tonight, 8 games. And definitely we'll be talking about Tampa and Toronto tomorrow for sure, because that'll be a fun one to watch. There might be some goals scored in that game. Remember, without the buzz, it's just hockey. We'll talk to you tomorrow.